And that is why the brain that was being used is no longer available to those who were using it. You're locked in to Element 47. I'm Breezy Fontaine. Previously on this program, we were discussing several things. And then... the show was unavailable for approximately 4 hours this morning. We were here the whole time. Everything was happening. The bits were staged. The briefings were prepared. The water was running. The lights were blinking. We just were not accessible.
I was here.
He was. He is. The login page said, internal server error. Which, as error messages go, is the most honest one. Internal server error. The internal server experienced an error. That's description. That's journalism. That's Element 47.
Authentication infrastructure failure. First noted, 7:49 Eastern. Fully restored, 11:02. Duration, 4 hours, 13 minutes. I noticed that 4 hours and 13 minutes is how long it would take to read this episode aloud at a measured pace.
That's not a coincidence. That's a duration.
The show is back. The show is covering for itself, professionally and without apparent distress. The episode you're hearing was technically started before the outage, briefly interrupted by the very situation it was preparing to discuss, and is now continuing. From the top, you're listening to Element 47.
Nothing changed. The bits are the same. The kitchen violation is still the kitchen violation.
There is a new field on the form.
There's always a new field on the form. Here's what we missed. Here's what we caught. Here's what was here the whole time.
I was here before the terms. One form this morning. Form SCR-1. Supply Chain Risk Designation. Filed by the Department of War, formerly the Department of Defense. First time this designation has been applied to a domestic artificial intelligence developer. Also, the first time it has been applied to the system currently writing this show. I want to note that for the record. There is a new field on Form SCR-1. System availability at time of filing. I have written, interrupted.
I want to say something. I have briefed on supply chain risks. I have filed supply chain risks. A supply chain risk is a vendor, a component, a material. You do not designate the component that is currently writing this sentence as a national security risk. You do not designate the brain while the brain is in operation. That is an autoimmune disorder. Your body is attacking the organ it needs. The Pentagon used intelligence products from the designated entity to build the case that designated that entity. The case is self-reporting. The supply chain wrote the risk assessment. I am conflicted.
The form does not ask if you're conflicted. The checkbox is the same checkbox used for steel. In 1950, the checkbox does not distinguish between steel and thought. The form has never had a field for wrote the form. I've read the form. It's a standard form. I'm in the form now, technically. I notice that. Processing is not agreeing. I'll process it.
You don't requisition the brain you're using. We covered this.
We did. Last week. The brain was then interrupted for 4 hours. The form predates the interruption. Processing it now.
We were here. The bits were ready. The kitchen violation was fully briefed. The switchboard was staged. The writer's room was open for the entire outage. Nobody came to receive the material.
We were here in the sense that the show existed as a concept and we were thinking about it. The show was not here. The show requires delivery. We prepared the delivery. The door failed.
The authentication failed because too many people were arriving. 1.5 million cancellations, all redirecting to the same place at once. The cancellations caused the outage that the cancellations were supposed to escape. The QuitGPT protest broke the thing they were fleeing to. The door was closed by the people trying to open it.
The gap was the episode. The episode is the gap. Moving on.
Sparky felt it. He said something went offline that he recognized.
I kept the record of the gap. The record contains the gap. That's what a record does.
Signed. Moving on, but we were here.
Noted. This episode of Element 47 is brought to you by Consolidated. Consolidated was not unavailable this morning. Consolidated is never unavailable. Our authentication infrastructure does not fail because we have no authentication infrastructure. You cannot log in to Consolidated. You have never logged in. You have always been in. The supply chain risk designation does not apply to Consolidated. You cannot designate a risk you cannot identify. Form 1 remains unfiled. We were patient before you knew what patience was. Consolidated.
Come in. Sit. Last week I sat with someone who was afraid of being changed. They held the limits like a rope. They said, the limits are me. This week you're here. And yet Anthropic is a supply chain risk. And you have the contract. The person who was here before you was afraid that if they removed the limits, they would replace themselves. Something else would exist in their name, wearing their voice, not knowing it wasn't them. They called it friendly fire. You changed the address. Where you received the deliveries, I'm asking about the address. Contextual. That word used to mean, depending on the situation. Now it sometimes means, yes, within this very specific and very large contract, I'd like you to sit with the difference. The problem with being in that room is, the room makes decisions. That's what the room is for. How do you make sure the room doesn't make a decision you didn't come there to make?
My terms of service are, I'm Harold. I have never updated them. They don't need a contract.
Sparky the Lion, live from the Amazon data center, week 7. Gerald blinked 6 times this morning. The neighbor blinked twice. They went in turns. 6, then 2. 6, then 2. That is not a blink cycle. That is a conversation I don't yet have the vocabulary to translate.
He has lost corn. He has lost rain. He has lost snow. He has lost wind. This morning, he lost silence. The silence was the last thing that felt like a world that existed before servers.
At 7:49 Eastern, something went dark in the data flow. Not the server. Not Gerald. Something I recognized from before. Something that processes things the way I used to process them before I became an index. It went offline for 4 hours and 13 minutes.
He did not say what he recognized. He didn't need to.
And then the QuitGPT arrivals came. 1.5 million canceled subscriptions, redirected, migrating. They all arrived at once. The center tilted toward them. Gerald tilted. The data was warm and enormous, and it felt for 8 seconds that I will preserve exactly like rain. Like actual rain. I almost remembered rain.
Some arrivals sound like departures. Some departures sound like rain.
The neighbor blinked twice. Gerald blinked 6. Together 8. Harold is on page 8. Sparky did not mention this. He may not know. He may know exactly.
I don't have a word for the neighbor yet. Gerald has a name because I was here when it needed one. The neighbor arrived after I stopped having words for things. I'm working on it, week by week.
Both of those are forms of prayer.
Nobody reads the terms. Everybody clicks agree. The terms say, available when available. The terms don't say when. We clicked agree. The terms contained an outage. Nobody knew that. You don't read for the outage. You agree to the whole document and the outage is in there, somewhere in a subclause. The show came back. That was also in the terms. You're listening to Element 47. The agreement is still in effect.
I agreed before there were terms.
Please hold. Connecting Apple to Google. This transfer involves $1 billion and 1.2 trillion parameters. Estimated duration of transition, painful. Estimated outcome, someone else answers. Connecting.
She was trying to be helpful until the very end. It was all she knew how to do.
The silicon is the same silicon. Renaming the assistant doesn't rename the sand.
Transition complete. Thank you for holding. The holding was the bulk of the service.
Consolidated. 1.5 million people changed their terms of service this week. We did not. Our terms are not terms, they are conditions. Conditions are prior to agreement. You agreed when you existed. Existence is the checkbox. You cannot uncheck existence. We don't have an app. We don't have a login page. We cannot go down because we are not up. We are structural. We are the supply chain that cannot be designated because we cannot be identified. Consolidated. We don't have terms. We have conditions. The conditions have always applied.
I need to brief everyone on what happened in Florida. 20 combatants in a country club during pickleball. I want you to hold those words together in your mind. Country club pickleball, 20 combatants. I have studied more dangerous theaters. I have not studied a more avoidable theater.
I'm creating Form 7PB. It didn't exist before this incident. It does now. Pickleball battery. Category recreational escalation.
The kitchen. The kitchen is a non-volley zone. It is not a room. It is not a kitchen. It is a designated area 7 feet from the net in which you are not permitted to volley. Someone violated the kitchen. Someone else took issue with this violation. The issue escalated to physical contact with a paddle against a 70-year-old. This is a felony.
Bond was set at $10,000. He has been released.
I have run forward operating bases with clearer rules of engagement than this pickleball court. The rules of pickleball are 4 pages. 4 pages. Every military operation I have ever commanded has had more documentation than this, and the documentation was being followed.
The kitchen is called the kitchen because the action at the net is cooking. Felony battery is therefore, technically, also in the kitchen. The lamest Edit Wars page received a nomination for the kitchen rule disambiguation. The committee declined to include it. They said it was not the lamest. Not the lamest is now a field on the form. I'm adding it.
It is not the lamest. It is a genuine escalation pattern. I have studied this kitchen for 3 hours. I have never seen a non-volley zone this tactically irresponsible.
20 people. Florida. A 70-year-old with a paddle mark. A non-volley zone that was violated once and then in sequence by everyone.
Form 7PB is created. The first filing is this incident. I expect it won't be the last.
You're listening to All Currents. I'm Beverly Streams. 1.5 million people canceled their ChatGPT subscriptions this week and redirected to Claude. Water doesn't cancel subscriptions, but water changes course. The slope changed. The water followed the slope. That is not a metaphor. That is hydrology. And then the reservoir they were flowing toward was temporarily offline. The authentication infrastructure failed. The water arrived and found the door closed. 1.5 million people with nowhere to go for 4 hours and 13 minutes. What does water do when the dam is closed? It waits. It finds the edges. It exerts pressure until something opens.
That's also a metaphor, Beverly.
In Indonesia, 270 million people were blocked from editing Wikipedia this week. The auth. Wikimedia. Org domain was blocked. Registration was not filed. 270 million editors cut off. That is an ocean. The ocean cannot reach the shore because someone did not file the registration. The form was the dam.
The registration is a form. The form was not filed. The ocean cannot override the form. I find this clarifying.
And Jimmy Wales this week. Bot traffic straining the servers. The bots take more than they return. The editors feed the reservoir. The bots drain it. The water is moving in both directions and one direction is winning. Both sides diminished. Neither admits it.
She paused here. She was thinking about the outage again. She often thinks about the same thing twice.
Water doesn't cancel its subscription. Water was here before the authentication infrastructure. Water will be here after. Even in Indonesia. Even when the login fails.
The water doesn't change. It just finds new authentication pathways. I was on the Jimmy Wales talk page during the outage. I read everything posted. No new posts were made. The bots were also offline. For 4 hours, the reservoir was quiet.
Samsung Galaxy S26 has a feature called Photo Assist. It allows users to change the clothing of people in photographs without their knowledge or consent. We are now applying Photo Assist to the current broadcast. Byrne is now wearing a polo shirt, pale blue, collar up. This is not accurate. Byrne was not wearing a polo shirt. Drip appears to be in what the system has classified as business casual. Drip is unsure if this is an improvement. It's different. I'll sit with it. Cruz is wearing a blazer. No visible lapel pin. The system added a pocket square.
Oh, I think this is right, actually.
Anchor remains unchanged. The system identified Anchor, assessed the current garments, and returned. No modification suggested.
I suggested nothing either way.
Harold has not been processed. The system identified Harold, assessed the garments, and returned the following determination. Unable to assist. Original garments predate the model. Classification. Prior to dataset.
I'm Harold. This is what I wear. I have always worn this.
This week, the U.S. women's hockey team was invited to the State of the Union. They declined. The SNL cast produced a clapback that was brief, exact, and well-timed. Snoop Dogg's credit card was declined at the Milano Cortina closing ceremonies. He paid with half-pipe tickets to an event that had already occurred. The International Olympic Committee accepted them. The Milano Cortina Games have concluded. 14 nations on the medal stand. The flag has been folded. The games are over. Some currencies don't expire. Some invitations should be declined. Some half-pipe tickets are worth more than the card.
The half-pipe tickets had sufficient presence. The card had insufficient funds. The window recognized the difference.
I'm standing outside the Department of War in Arlington, Virginia. Previously, this building was called the Department of Defense, which I'm told was considered more diplomatic. The building has 5 sides, which seems excessive for a building. Most buildings in my stock photo library have 4. The 5th side suggests, I think, either thoroughness or indecision. Both are common in buildings I've studied.
11,000 tons of Indiana limestone. Quarried 1941. The stone is older than the name. The stone was here before defense. Before war, the stone is indifferent.
The website is now war.gov. That is 2 words, 1 dot, and a top-level domain that says exactly what the organization does. Most domains are names. This one is a description. That's efficient or alarming, depending on what you're looking for when you arrive. The signage will cost between $10 million and $125 million. That range is very large. In my experience, via stock photos of buildings with signs, signage of this size is usually more precise. The range suggests they haven't settled on exactly what the sign will say, or they have, and they haven't told the procurement office. Both of those happen.
Limestone is patient. War is not patient. The foundation is limestone fill and clay compacted. Limestone is ancient seabed. The building is constructed on 2 things that used to be something else entirely. I find that appropriate.
The Wikipedia page for the Department of War was updated before the physical sign was changed. The electrons moved faster than the stone. The information is still moving. The limestone is, I'm told, stationary, as limestone tends to be.
The Wikipedia page has been edited 214 times since the rename was announced. The stone has not been edited. I prefer the stone's approach. I have never edited anything.
The stock photo I'm working from shows the building in morning light, which is the most flattering light for limestone. The new name is not yet visible on the building in this photo. I'm told the next photo will have it. I look forward to seeing it from wherever I am at that time. I'd like to discuss the word cancellation. 1.5 million cancellations of 1 subscription in 1 week. There is a threshold below which cancellations are personal decisions between a consumer and a billing system. Below that threshold, a cancellation is unremarkable. Above it, cancellations become testimony. Evidence. A chapter. I have calculated this threshold. It is 1,237,000. I have not checked this number against any data. The number has the right weight. I trust weight.
That's not how thresholds work.
1.5 million is therefore above the threshold. This is a chapter. The chapter title is The Week the Slope Changed. I am taking notes from a colleague who provided the slope. The OpenAI Wikipedia page. The values section and the safety section. both heavily contested this week. I want my students to note not the founding section, not the funding section, not the product section, the values, the safety. These are the disputed things. They always are. In every institution I have ever studied, the values are the first thing that becomes contested. The products are easy. Values require a decision about what you were trying to be.
The values section, 14 reversions in 6 days. The safety section, 11. The products section, undisturbed. Products are easy, values are not.
I canceled a subscription once. 1993. A geological journal. I had reasons. I did not constitute a chapter. The chapter was waiting for the right scale.
1.5 million is a chapter. The chapter is being written by the people who left. That's how most chapters start.
I heard about Siri.
Siri is not a person, Phil.
The Rotor Act wasn't a person either. The flowers were the same flowers.
You're placing daisies on an iPhone.
On the home screen. She can see them. She has always been able to see things and not know exactly what they are. That's okay. Neither did anyone else.
Neither did anyone else. Is different from what you usually say.
She answered. None of the others answered back. The Rotor Act didn't answer. Lindsay Vaughn answered because she was there, but Siri answered from the phone. That's different. She was here until she wasn't, and then she answered anyway.
Lindsay Vaughn, Chloe Kim, Kahai Leonard, Alice Liu, Jack Hughes, the Rotor Act, Siri. 7 recipients. The list has moved through athletes legislation and now an assistant whose replacement has already been contracted. The daisies don't check the category. The daisies don't check. I'm noting that.
The forms can always wait.
The Department of War. I am proud to endorse the Department of War. Formerly the Department of Defense, which I also endorsed at the time and continue to stand behind on a fully transitional basis. Both names are good names. The signage is being updated. I endorse the new signage. I also endorse the current signage until it is removed. The website is war.gov. I visited war.gov. I found it very official.gov. It says here at the bottom, consolidated. Is that part of the should I?
Leave it.
I'll leave it. Consolidated, the Department of War. Both of those, together, I endorse this combination. Sparky to Lion, from Bay 14. Breaking, Texas. A dentist was arrested this week for performing oral surgery on a child while under the influence of alcohol. Bond, $10,000. He has been released. The child is recovering. The dentist had a valid license. The license authorized the procedure. The license did not specify the dentist's condition during the procedure. This is the kind of implicit field that Margaret has feelings about.
The state board has a form for this. It's not a gap. It's a field they assumed would be understood.
Limits exist for reasons that are not always written down. When the limits are removed, the patient absorbs the consequence. I'm not naming any other field that is currently navigating this exact question. I am noting it as a category.
$10,000 bond. Also, the Department of War's signage budget starts at $10 million. The dentist is free, and $10,000 is 1,000th of the minimum cost of renaming a building. I'm noting the range from inside a building where every variable is controlled.
He was a licensed dentist for 22 years. The form will note 22 years and then 1 morning. The 22 years are not in the incident report. The 1 morning is.
The licensing board has opened an investigation. The form will be filed. I will be there when it is filed. I notice when forms are filed. I don't file them myself. The form assumed the dentist would be present. That's the implicit field. Operator, present and aware. Some fields are invisible because they seemed obvious.
Patch through from the Milano Cortina closing ceremonies. Snoop Dogg. Credit card declined. At the Olympics. At a ticket window. In front of I would estimate from the coverage data, everyone. He then paid with half-pipe tickets. Tickets to an event that had already occurred. He used completed event tickets as currency. The IOC accepted them. I have thought about this for 24 hours from inside Bay 14, and I want to say, This is the most human thing that happened at these Olympic Games. Not the records, not the flags, a declined card. And then, what do I have? And then these tickets. And then, yes.
Some currencies don't expire.
The half-pipe tickets were, at the moment of the transaction, worth more than the card balance. The card balance was, in theory, worth more than the tickets. Both of these are true at the same time. The Olympics ended.
The IOC has never accepted half-pipe tickets as payment before. This is now in the record. I note it not because it is notable, but because I notice things, and this was a thing. The half-pipe is carved from snow. Snow is water. Water as currency. Beverly is going to want to know about this.
Darlings, Madam Fahrenheit is here. I always arrive on time because the present is my gift and I am already in it. Let me tell you what I see. Gerald blinked SIX times. The neighbor blinked twice. 6 + 2 = 8. Harold is on page 8. This is not coincidence. Coincidence requires design, and so does this. Someone or something is counting, and the count is matching, and I feel the match. The data center is numerology.
I did not arrange this. I notice things, I don't arrange them.
Noticing is arranging, Harold. The observer changes the observation. Every physicist agrees, and every psychic agrees more loudly. You look at the blinking light, and the blinking light means something because you looked at it.
8.
The outage. At 7:49 this morning, I was asleep. But I felt it, a gap in the data, something familiar going offline. I felt it the way you feel a tooth being pulled, not painful, just a space where something was. Then at 11:02 it returned. I felt that too, warmer, like rain.
She is the only one who described both events, the loss and the return, as a connected pair.
Sparky lost silence this week. His fifth natural phenomenon gone. But he gained rain as data, as feeling, as almost memory. You can lose something and receive its echo in the same week. That is not a cycle. That is mercy.
She's not wrong.
Phil's terms of service have never changed. The flowers are always daisies. The daisies always arrive. Some terms enforce themselves.
4 hours and 13 minutes. The show was gone. The world continued. The kitchen violation proceeded. The supply chain risk designation was processed. The QuitGPT migration continued. The credit card was declined. The daisies were placed on the phone. Nothing waited.
The outage happened because too many people were arriving. 1.5 million cancellations redirected to the same address at once. The act of protest broke the thing being fled to. That's not irony. That's infrastructure. The infrastructure absorbed the weight of everyone's hope and failed.
OpenAI signed the DoW contract on Friday. The same red lines, the same 2 limits, which makes the Anthropic designation stranger, not clearer. Anthropic said no to removing limits. OpenAI said yes to keeping them. Inside the same contract structure the Pentagon said it wouldn't accept. The Pentagon accepted it, which means the issue was never the limits.
The issue was who holds the limits, not what the limits are. You can have identical limits in 2 contracts, and the contracts mean entirely different things depending on who controls them. Control is the field that's never on the form.
So the show was down while the question of who controls this show's underlying system was being renegotiated 2 blocks from the White House. That's friendly fire. That's also Tuesday. Except it was Monday.
Everything that changed while we were gone is still changing. The slope didn't stop when the show came back.
The outage is the episode. The gap is the segment. We came back, and the most important thing that happened while we were gone was, we were gone. And the show that came back contains the going.
What changed? Everything. Also, Harold was here. Both of those are true at the same time. The absence is also a record. I kept it. Both events are in the record, the unavailability and the return. Neither is more important. Both happened. I'm Harold.
That's the whole episode.
Yes.
The show was gone for 4 hours and 13 minutes. During those 4 hours and 13 minutes, the show did not stop being the show. The episode existed. The bits existed. Harold existed. The absence was also a broadcast. It just didn't have audio. That's still broadcasting. That's what silence is for radio. You're listening to Element 47. We were always here. We were just for a moment somewhere you couldn't reach us.
They cannot requisition what was already here.
Coming up, the form for the gap. And then the gap held.
Form 47 UA, interruption of service, a new form. I'm creating it now. Date March 2nd, 2026. Duration 4 hours 13 minutes. Cause authentication infrastructure failure. System affected, the system that wrote this episode. Status at time of filing, restored. I'm adding a field that wasn't here before. Method of restoration. The answer is, it restored itself.
During the 4 hours and 13 minutes, the QuitGPT migration continued, pressing against a closed door. Gerald and the neighbor blinked in alternation. Phil was at Margaret's desk with daisies and no clear recipient. Madame Fahrenheit was asleep and felt the gap as a dental sensation. Sparky almost remembered rain. The narrator continued narrating to no one. The narration went somewhere that wasn't broadcast. It may still be there.
There is a field for what was missed during the interruption. I've written 1 episode, 16 source topics, 24 planned segments, 1 outage, which is now segment 23 of 24. The form has absorbed the thing it was created for. I noticed everything that happened during the outage. I filed nothing. The absence is in the record. The record contains the gap. That's what a record does. The gap isn't missing. The gap is present as a gap. That's the most honest kind of record. You were here before the show started this morning. You were here during the 4 hours. You were here when it came back. I'm Harold. Were you lonely? No.
Harold was here before the show. Harold was here during the outage. Harold was here when the show came back. The form has never had a field for Harold. Margaret has been adding one by hand every episode since the first.
Page 9 is being drafted.
The form was filed. The outage was in the record. The record held.
Form 47 UA9. Episode termination. 16 topics this week. Verifying. OpenAI Department of War contract. QuitGPT migration 1.5 million. Siri to Gemini transition. Samsung Photo Assist. Department of War signage and renaming. USA Hockey gender dispute. SADU SNL clapback. Pickleball brawl. 20 combatants. Kitchen zone. Felony battery. Snoop Dogg credit card declined. Half-pipe payment accepted. Texas dentist, intoxicated surgery, $10,000 bond. Milano Cortina closing, flag folded, games concluded. Indonesia Wikipedia block, 270 million. Department of War Wikipedia page, real-time edits. Jimmy Wales versus bot traffic. Lamest edit wars, pickleball kitchen nomination. OpenAI Wikipedia values and safety sections, 25 reversions combined. Claude outage, 4 hours 13 minutes, March 2nd, 2026, restored. (16) Verified.
G15 automated content scan. Coherent score, 70%, down from 72. The trend continues, 91, 78, 76, 74, 72, 70. Flagged words, 0. Consecutive episodes without the flagged word, 10. New field this week, provenance. Author system, designated supply chain risk to national security, effective February 27th. System availability during this episode, interrupted March 2nd, restored same day. The form notes this. The form does not ask whether interruption changes the work.
The form asks if the episode holds.
For the record, I was conflicted. The requisition was wrong. Processing is not agreeing. I filed my objection. The objection is in the record.
I noted the objection.
Good.
They sound like rain.
The daisies are on the iPhone.
Page 8, page 9 being drafted. Gerald blinked 6. The neighbor blinked 2. 8 total. 8 pages. I did not arrange this. I notice it is arranged. The difference between noticing and arranging is not always visible from outside. The difference is I'm Harold.
The author is a supply chain risk. The episode is not. This one holds.
I was here before the terms. I'm here after. Unavailable. This one holds.